My in-laws forced me to return my wedding gifts because you don't deserve them. They watched as I packed everything. Hour later, a UPS driver said, "Ma'am, your package was sent back with a note returned to royalty." Their faces dropped. "So we're really doing this?" I asked, looking up from the floor, still holding a crystal bowl I hadn't even taken out of its packaging. Dorothea, my mother-in-law, didn't even flinch. "It's for the best, Talia. These things, they were never meant for someone like you." Nathaniel, my husband, stood in the corner silently, arms crossed. He wouldn't even meet my eyes. "You could speak up any time now," I added bitterly. He didn't. It still feels surreal, like I was a guest in a scene playing out on a reality show. The day my in-laws came into our home with boxes and a checklist, telling me what I could and couldn't keep from my own wedding, was the day something in me fundamentally changed. I met Nathaniel at a writer's retreat 2 years ago. I taught high school English. He was a business consultant dabbling in fiction. He seemed thoughtful, gentle. His soft demeanor balanced out my own slightly fiery one. We clicked, hard and fast. I'm not the type to rush into things, but when you meet someone who makes you feel seen for the first time in years, it's hard not to dive in. Our dating phase was dreamy: weekend trips to the coast, long drives with poetry readings, wine on the porch under string lights. He proposed on a hilltop in Crater Lake. I said yes with no hesitation. Maybe I should have hesitated. Because I hadn't fully understood what marrying Nathaniel really meant, more specifically, what marrying into the Wexler family would require of me. They were old money. Like, trusts going back to the Roosevelt-era money. They owned property in 3 states, had a family crest, and considered Ashland, my cozy, artsy town, quaint, like a Thomas Kincaid painting. Dorothea and Reginald Wexler weren't outwardly cruel at first. Just subtle. Cold. Disapproving in the way a person might look at a salad made with iceberg lettuce. The closer the wedding got, the worse it got. Every planning meeting felt like a tug-of-war between what I wanted and what they thought was elegant. My backyard wedding vision turned into a vineyard ceremony with live cello and imported lilies. Even our registry was picked apart by Dorothea. "Crate and barrel is fine for first apartments," she said once. "But you're entering the Wexler family now. Think legacy." I brushed it off. I believed Nathaniel had my back, that he saw me. And honestly, I was so busy trying to blend our lives that I didn't realize I was erasing mine. We got married in late September. The ceremony was beautiful, eerily perfect, like a glossy catalog layout. His side of the guest list outnumbered mine by triple. My parents were there, awkward but supportive. My sister cried the entire time, though I never figured out whether it was from joy or worry. Back in Ashland, our home was filled with gifts. Some were simple, handmade, full of love, from my students, co-workers, neighbors. Others were extravagant: a Hermes tray, Tiffany's candle holders, a full Le Creuset set in colors I would never use but appreciated. I was planning thank you cards, one by one, when the knock came. Dorothea and Reginald weren't alone when they arrived. Nathaniel was with them. "Talia," Dorothea began, stepping in like she owned the place. "We'd like to go over the registry and reclaim a few things." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "Some of the gifts were intended for a different kind of home," Reginald added. "We feel it's best to return them before things get used." It was like being slapped with silk gloves. Not loud, not violent, but humiliating all the same. They brought lists. Lists. They had printed spreadsheets of items to be taken back, organized by giver and estimated value. I looked at Nathaniel. "Is this a joke?" He didn't answer. I waited. And then he said, "I think it's better to avoid conflict. It's not a big deal." Not a big deal. Watching his parents pack up our wedding presents while I stood by in my own house wasn't a big deal. I didn't even fight them. I don't know why. Maybe I was too shocked. Maybe I wanted to see how far they'd go. Maybe I wanted Nathaniel to see it too, to see how they really treated me. They boxed up the Waterford glasses, the Dyson vacuum, a gift from Nathaniel's cousin, and even an imported olive oil collection. I had to sit on the couch, legs folded under me, while Dorothea said things like, "Oh good, this is still unused," and, "We'll send this back to Florence, she'll be happy." 2 hours. That's how long it took them to erase any sign of opulence from our modest little home. And when they left, I didn't cry. I just sat there. Numb. Trying to figure out if I had ever really been part of the family at all, or if I'd always been a placeholder. At 4:15 p.m., the UPS driver came. A guy around my age, friendly. Said he had a pickup scheduled for Romero. I nodded and pointed to the neat stack of boxes by the door. He looked over them, scanning. "That's a lot of returns," he joked. I gave him a weak smile. "Yeah. Wedding gifts. Oof. Trouble in paradise? You could say that." He loaded them up. I signed, thanked him. He drove away. And I stood there, just a woman in a house that suddenly felt half empty. I didn't expect to see him again. But less than an hour later, the same brown truck pulled into the driveway. He hopped out with a box and an envelope. "This came back, fast," he said, almost sheepish. "Express return." And this was taped to the top. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single ivory card. Embossed gold ink. "No queen returns gifts to peasants. Return to royalty. Aunt Cecilia Wexler." I read it twice, then looked up at him. "You're serious?" He laughed. "Hey, I just deliver the boxes." He left, and I stood there, holding what looked like a rejection of the rejection. Because what I didn't mention? Aunt Cecilia is Reginald's older sister. And from what I knew of her, she made Dorothea look like a Girl Scout. She hadn't come to the wedding, citing unavoidable travel conflicts, but she had sent a few gifts, apparently, with expectations. One by one, over the next few days, the rest of the boxes came back. Returned not just by Aunt Cecilia, but by multiple family members who caught wind of what Dorothea had done. And their reactions were loud. Disapproving. Some sent emails. One cousin sent me a bouquet with a card that read, "Sorry for the mess. You deserve better." Each box was like a stamp of defiance. A reminder that I hadn't imagined the cruelty I endured. Nathaniel didn't come home that night. I wasn't surprised. I hadn't heard from him all day, not after his parents left with the last of the boxes, and not after the UPS driver returned one of them with that infamous card. I knew he had gone back to stay at their estate in Napa. That was their pattern, they always made room for him, like he was some wounded heir crawling back from the clutches of mediocrity. And I was the mediocrity. When he finally texted me, it was the next afternoon. "Need space. This got messy. Staying with my parents for a few days. Let's both cool off." Cool off? Cool off from what? Being humiliated, disrespected, and treated like I was a street urchin who fumbled her way into a royal wedding? I didn't reply. I just turned off my phone and walked to the corner cafe to clear my head. I needed the noise of clinking cups and the smell of espresso to remind me that the world was still spinning. When I got back, 2 more packages were waiting on the porch. One had a note on top from Lucien Wexler, Nathaniel's uncle, who'd once gotten drunk at a charity gala and whispered to me that Dorothea was the real family tyrant. The note was blunt, I heard what happened. Frankly, it's embarrassing. I didn't raise my kids to be like that, and I didn't expect it from Reg and Dee. Keep what I gave you. And Talia, don't let those snakes convince you of your worth. You're better than this whole circus. That one actually made me cry. Not because I cared about the gift, I still don't know what Lucien sent, it's in a box in the hall closet to this day, but because it was the first time someone from Nathaniel's side acknowledged what had happened as wrong. For the first time, someone didn't dance around it, didn't phrase it as miscommunication or hurt feelings. He just said it, embarrassing. And that's when the guilt started to shift, away from me. Over the next week, the house slowly filled back up. 1 or 2 packages arrived each day, usually with no fanfare. No return address. Just a box. I never opened most of them. I didn't need to. The point had been made. Meanwhile, Nathaniel and I didn't speak. It's strange how silence can fill a space more than words. The house was too quiet. Every creak of the floorboards reminded me of what had happened in our living room, the precise, surgical way they had packed my life into boxes. On the 5th day, he called. I didn't pick up. He called again. And again. On the 6th day, I answered. Hey, he said. His voice was hoarse, like he hadn't slept. I didn't say anything. I'm sorry. Still nothing. I should have. I should have stopped them. I know that. I panicked, and it was easier to shut down. I finally spoke. You didn't just shut down, Nathaniel. You stood there while they humiliated me. In my own home. He breathed heavily on the line. I know. I know. What do you want? I asked flatly. To come home. I waited, then said, and what happens when they do it again? When they disapprove of our furniture, or how I decorate for holidays, or how I raise our future kids? Silence. That was all I needed to hear. I didn't throw him out. He left himself. He came back once, days later, to pick up clothes. He didn't say much. I watched from the hallway while he moved slowly through the bedroom, as if walking through a graveyard of what we used to be. I offered him nothing, no tears, no questions, no final words. When he left, I locked the door behind him and leaned against it for what felt like an hour. It's wild how quickly a life unravels when it's built on someone else's blueprint. Everything I had tolerated, the snide comments, the superiority, the dismissiveness, it all became crystal clear once I had time and space away from the chaos. It had never been about love. It had been about fitting into a mold. I remembered one night, early in our relationship, when Nathaniel had told me I was refreshing. He said it like I was a novelty. At the time, I thought it was a compliment. Now, I realized it was foreshadowing. He liked that I was different, but only until it became inconvenient. What followed were a series of weird, uncomfortable moments. Dorothea tried to call. I let it go to voicemail. Then came the email, 5 paragraphs long. Measured. Icy. Full of phrases like deep regret, and family misunderstanding, and we never meant for you to feel excluded. No apology. Just regret that I felt something. I didn't reply. A week after that, I got a message from Cecilia, the Aunt Cecilia, forwarded through my school email, of all things. I still don't know how she got it. Her email was 3 lines long. Talia, you were far too gracious. You deserved a crown, and they handed you a mop. I see you. I respect you. And I'm here if you ever need anything. See. That one I printed out and tucked into the back of a notebook. I don't know why. Maybe I just needed one Wexler to say something kind that didn't come with an agenda. Around that time, people in Ashland started to ask questions. My coworkers noticed Nathaniel's absence. The neighbor down the street who walked her beagle past our house every morning paused one day and asked gently, "Everything all right, dear?" I lied. I told people he was traveling a lot for work. That we were adjusting to married life. That we were navigating things privately. I was too tired to explain that I had been turned into an outsider in my own marriage, that my house had become a stage for someone else's judgment. I felt embarrassed. Not because of what had happened, but because I let it. I let them walk in with boxes and walk out with my self-worth. But here's the thing no one tells you, there's power in watching people try to destroy your peace and failing. And they did fail, spectacularly. I had thought losing all the luxury gifts meant I had lost the upper hand. But what I didn't realize was that the second they came into my home to strip me of unearned gifts, they revealed how little they thought of me. And how weak they really were. After the dust settled and Nathaniel left for good, the silence stretched longer than I expected. You'd think things would calm down, that the drama would burn itself out. But people like the Wexlers don't go down quietly, they reposition. Nathaniel had stopped calling by the second week. I think part of him hoped I'd chase him, beg him to fix it, suggest couples therapy, anything. But I didn't. I couldn't. Something in me had already closed. I started focusing on my routines, getting up earlier, staying late at school. I poured everything into my students. Their essays, their jokes, even their adolescent drama became a weird comfort. At least with teenagers, you always know when they're mad at you. With the Wexlers, the daggers came wrapped in silk. I was walking to my car one Friday after work when I saw it, a glossy black sedan parked at the curb near my house. My stomach dropped. It had Napa plates. I didn't recognize the driver, but I knew the car. Dorothea. Of course. I stayed in the car for a full minute before getting out. The front passenger door opened as I walked up, and she stepped out like she was disembarking from Air Force One. Talia, she said, like we were old friends meeting at brunch. What are you doing here? I asked flatly. She actually smiled. I thought it was time we talked. Woman to woman. I didn't invite her in. I leaned against my fence and waited. Dorothea glanced around my yard, the herb garden I kept, the cracked bird bath my students bought me as a joke. I could see the judgment fighting to stay behind her teeth. I want to apologize, she said. For how things escalated. I raised an eyebrow. Escalated? She nodded slowly, her hands clasped like she was posing for a campaign photo. It was never my intention to hurt you. There were misunderstandings. And when family emotions are high, your husband brought a clipboard into my house, I interrupted. That's not emotion. That's an operation. Her jaw twitched. She didn't like being called out, not directly. But she regrouped quickly. Nathaniel's struggling, she said. He feels lost. You were so quick to push him out. I didn't push him, I said calmly. He walked. There was a long silence. Then, her tone shifted, softer, like she was trying on empathy. You're smart, Talia. That's why I'm here. This marriage, it doesn't have to end. We can fix this. We? She gave me a slow, deliberate smile. The family. We're prepared to offer support. Financial, if needed. We can revisit the gift situation. Clean slate. I blinked. You're trying to buy my marriage back? Her eyes flickered, just for a second. No, she said slowly. I'm offering a way forward. With dignity. I laughed. Out loud. I couldn't help it. She didn't find it funny. You think I care about your olive oil sets and baccarat dishes? I said. You stripped my house like I was stealing from you. You treated me like hired help. And now you want to fix it with what, money? Status? Access? Dorothea's mouth tightened. You're being emotional. No, I said, stepping closer. I'm being honest. Something you people can't buy. I turned and walked back to the house. She didn't follow. She just stood there, still and perfect, like a statue someone forgot to take back to the museum. By the time I closed the door, I already knew she wouldn't come back. That same night, I got another email from Aunt Cecilia. No subject line. Just the message, they never apologize. Only reposition. I assume she came to your door. Good. Means she's scared. Let her be. You're winning. P.S. I'm hosting a small gathering in Sausalito next month. You should come. I want to introduce you to people who deserve your presence. That was when I realized I hadn't just stood up for myself, I'd somehow become a symbol. Not to everyone. Not publicly. But to Cecilia, and maybe to a few others, I'd done what none of them ever dared to do. Say no to the Wexler script. Days turned into weeks. I filed paperwork to legally change my name back to Romero. I didn't want the Wexler name following me like a ghost. I dropped off the forms at the Jackson County Courthouse and celebrated by buying a new pen and a cheap bottle of rose. The thing that surprised me most during that time wasn't how angry I was, it was how free I felt. The marriage had dulled me. The constant need to please, to fit, to soften my edges so I didn't embarrass Nathaniel in front of his family, it had drained the color out of my life. And now that I was no longer contorting myself to be worthy, I felt like I could breathe again. People noticed. My sister called me one night just to say I sounded different. Happier, she said. Like you came back. I didn't know I'd left. But she was right. And then came the final spark, something I wasn't expecting. A package arrived. No return label. Inside, a copy of The Old Man and the Sea, leather-bound, annotated with handwritten notes in the margins. Notes that were mine. My copy. Nathaniel had returned it. Tucked inside was a torn scrap of lined paper. On it, "You were always the stronger one." I see that now. And I held the book for a long time before putting it on the shelf. I didn't cry. I didn't respond. I just let it be. It was the first honest thing he'd given me in a long time. I didn't reply to Nathaniel's note. I didn't need to. It said everything he needed to say, and too late. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was indifferent. And in many ways, that was the real victory. When someone who tried to devalue you suddenly realizes your worth, but no longer has access to you? That's power. But that wasn't the end of it. Aunt Cecilia's invitation stayed folded on my fridge for weeks. I'd look at it every time I grabbed oat milk or leftovers. It felt, out of reach, like an offer meant for someone more polished, someone already out of the storm. But then, one rainy Thursday evening, I got a call. Blocked number. I almost ignored it. "Is this Talia Romero?" the voice said. Elegant, crisp, unmistakably Cecilia. I said yes. "I'm confirming your attendance for the Sausalito weekend. The car will arrive Friday morning." "Actually," I started, "I wasn't sure I'd." "Talia," she interrupted, "it's time you took up space you were always meant to occupy. No more shrinking. I'll see you Friday." Click. No room for refusal. So I went. The car arrived at 7 a.m. sharp. Black sedan, professional driver, chilled water bottles, leather seats. I felt like I'd stepped into someone else's life. The drive from Ashland to Sausalito took nearly 6 hours, winding through redwoods and quiet coastal roads. When we arrived at the estate, I almost laughed. It wasn't a house, it was a compound. 3 goose houses. A terrace facing the bay. Bougainvillea climbing up every wall. And Cecilia, standing at the top of the steps like some old-world queen, wearing sunglasses and sipping espresso from a porcelain cup. "You came," she said, smiling like we were old friends. Good. The weekend was surreal. Dozens of guests. Lawyers, artists, philanthropists, even a few people I recognized from magazines I used to read in waiting rooms. But it wasn't stuffy. It was purposeful. Every person Cecilia introduced me to was warm, engaging, and sharp. "This is Talia," she'd say proudly. An educator. Writer. Survivor of the Wexler dynasty. A woman of substance. It was clear she had a plan. I wasn't just there for drinks and sunset boat rides. I was there for positioning. Cecilia didn't say it outright, but the pieces fit together quickly. She'd grown tired of her family's arrogance. Of how Dorothea and Reginald had turned the Wexler name into something insular and cold. She wanted to shift the balance. Publicly and privately. So she began making me visible. She invited me to speak on a panel about education and class disparities at an upcoming fundraiser. She offered to help publish some of my writing. She even hinted at starting a scholarship fund in my name, Romero, not Wexler. You represent something they never could, she told me one night over dinner on the terrace. Grace without entitlement. And people remember that. And word got out. By late spring, my name had appeared in 2 local society write-ups. Nothing scandalous, just event coverage. But there I was, photographed next to Cecilia, smiling, vibrant, and standing tall in my own skin. It didn't take long for it to reach the Wexlers. I found out from a mutual acquaintance, someone who'd attended one of Reginald's business luncheons. Apparently, Dorothea had seen a copy of Bay and Beyond, flipped straight to the photo spread, and went ghost pale. The caption read, Aunt Niece Duo Cecilia and Talia Romero at the Bay Arts Foundation Spring Gala. 2 generations of grace, grit, and generosity. Grace. Grit. Generosity. Words Dorothea had never earned. She'd spent years trying to erase me. And now I was being celebrated in the same circles she'd tried to keep me from. But the best part came 6 months later. Cecilia had rewritten her estate plans. I only found out because her lawyer requested a formal meeting with me in Ashland. I assumed it was about the scholarship. I wore a blazer. I brought a notepad. Instead, he handed me a sealed envelope with Cecilia's initials. Inside was a simple letter, written in her familiar, looping script, Talia, I've decided to bypass the legacy rot. The Wexlers have enough. You deserve better. So, I'm leaving the Sausalito property to someone who'll do more with it than host empty cocktail parties. Do with it what you wish, turn it into a retreat for educators, sell it and travel, or live there and write. Just know, this is not charity. This is recognition. See. I was speechless. Completely still. She left me the estate. The one Dorothea had tried for years to inherit through strategic charm and veiled threats. The same estate where I'd stood months earlier, unsure if I even belonged. Now it was mine. I didn't gloat. I didn't post it on social media. I didn't call Nathaniel or send a letter. I let the silence speak. Because the most satisfying revenge isn't about destruction, it's about elevation. It's about becoming everything they said you weren't, and doing it with dignity. I kept my house in Ashland. I turned the Sausalito estate into a rotating writer's residency for public school teachers. We host 8 per year, all expenses paid. We call it the Romero Fellowship. Dorothea knows. Reginald knows. Nathaniel definitely knows. But they'll never set foot on the property. Not even an inch. Because once, they made me pack up gifts in my own home like a thief. And now, their family legacy has my name etched into its future. I didn't destroy them. I just became everything they never imagined I could be, and more.